Okay, picture this. It is barely 30 years since the United States won its freedom from Great Britain in the Revolutionary War. The ink on the Constitution is, historically speaking, barely even dry. And suddenly, the young nation finds itself plunging right back into a massive, high-stakes war with that exact same global superpower. Let's dive right into what historians often refer to as America's Second War of Independence. And, as we walk through this explainer today, you're going to see exactly why that title is just so incredibly fitting. The whole conflict really came down to one massive question. Could a 30-year-old nation actually survive a rematch with an empire? The United States in the early 1800s was still very much figuring itself out. It didn't have a massive standing army, its economy was still developing, and the political system was brand new. Facing off against the formidable British military, an empire that literally spanned the globe, wasn't just a risk. It was a potentially fatal gamble for the entire American experiment. Now, tensions didn't just explode overnight. They built up gradually. And a huge breaking point was this practice called impressment. See, the British Navy was desperate for manpower for their own ongoing conflicts, so they would stop American merchant ships right in the middle of the ocean. They'd board these vessels and forcibly remove sailors, claiming that these men were actually British citizens who had deserted. For a young, proud United States, having foreign naval officers board your ships and kidnap your crew was seen as a massive, unacceptable insult to their newly won sovereignty. But impressment was really just one piece of the puzzle. The nation was rapidly becoming a boiling pot of tension. Out on the western frontier, American settlers pushing west were clashing with Native American nations, who were actually receiving support and supplies from British forces stationed just up north in Canada. That made the Americans furious. On top of that, Britain was locked in a massive war with France, placing severe trade restrictions on the US that were just crippling the broader American economy. Throw in some intense political pressure from a vocal, aggressive group of politicians in Congress known as the War Hawks, who were demanding military action, and, well, you've got a recipe for war. By June of 1812, all of this pressure landed squarely on the desk of President James Madison. The economic strain, the frontier violence, the impressment, the shouting of the War Hawks, it all reached an absolute tipping point. Madison took the monumental step of officially asking the United States Congress to declare war on Great Britain. The decision was made. Ready or not, the 30-year-old nation was going back to war with the empire. And honestly, it was an incredibly perilous gamble. On one side, you have a small, vastly unprepared US military. Their initial strategic moves involved invading British territory in Canada, and those early invasions were pretty much disastrous failures. On the flip side, you have Great Britain, a massive, highly experienced global military force. The fighting didn't just happen in one place either. It erupted across multiple fronts, spreading from the Great Lakes region all the way down the Atlantic coast. The young nation was immediately pushed onto its back foot. But hey, amid all the early struggles on land, a bright spot actually emerged out on the water. Naval battles saw some surprisingly notable American successes, and the absolute most famous of these victories belonged to the USS Constitution. The ship became a total legend. During fierce naval combat, British cannonballs were reportedly seen literally bouncing right off the heavy oak sides of the ship, dealing minimal damage. This incredible resilience earned the ship one of the coolest nicknames in military history: Old Ironsides. It gave the American public a hugely needed boost of morale. That morale, however, would be severely tested. Fast forward to August of 1814, and things took a disastrous turn for the United States when British forces launched a direct attack on the capital, Washington, D.C. And they were successful. The British marched right into the city and set fire to several major government buildings. Just imagine the utter shock of seeing the White House and the Capitol building, the very symbols of this new republic, completely engulfed in flames and smoke. It was, without a doubt, one of the darkest moments in early American history. But the American spirit didn't break. Just weeks after the devastation in Washington, the British forces turned their sights on Baltimore, Maryland, in September 1814. They attempted to capture the city by launching a massive naval bombardment against its primary defense point, Fort McHenry. Imagine the sky raining down explosives for an entire night, not knowing if your defenses are going to hold. But the American forces held their ground. They heroically withstood that lengthy, terrifying nighttime bombardment. Now, witnessing this dramatic, explosive battle firsthand was an American lawyer and poet named Francis Scott Key. He was actually aboard a ship during the attack, watching the night sky light up with rockets and bombs. In the darkness, he had absolutely no clue who was winning. But as dawn broke, He looked through the smoke and saw that the massive American flag was still flying over Fort McHenry, proving the Americans had held the fort. That emotional resolution, seeing the flag still there after such a brutal attack, was profound. The absolute awe of that moment completely inspired him. He pulled out some paper and immortalized the climax of this war in a poem, the Star-Spangled Banner. That poem, born literally out of the smoke of the War of 1812, resonated so deeply with the American public that it eventually became our national anthem, officially adopted over a century later in 1931. Okay, let's map out this chaotic ending, because the timeline is fascinating. After Fort McHenry in September, both sides were pretty much exhausted. Peace negotiations concluded with the Treaty of Ghent, which was signed in Europe in December of 1814. But here is the truly wild part about how this war ended. Because communication across the Atlantic by ship took so long back then, the peace treaty was actually signed before the final major battle even happened. Completely ignorant of that December peace treaty, British and American forces clashed one last time. In January 1815, American forces led by General Andrew Jackson faced a massive British assault. The result was a decisive and overwhelmingly famous American victory at the Battle of New Orleans. It's ironic but deeply impactful. General Andrew Jackson became a national hero practically overnight, completely unaware that the war was technically already over on paper. So, the crucial point is understanding what this all meant in the end. The legacy of the War of 1812 is kind of a paradox. Militarily, it basically ended in a stalemate. The Treaty of Ghent essentially hit the reset button, restoring pre-war boundaries without even directly solving that whole impressment dispute. But culturally, it was a game changer. It massively forged American national identity and confidence. They had gone toe-to-toe with the British Empire a second time and survived. However, there was a darker side to this legacy too. The war heavily weakened several Native American nations who had allied with Britain, leaving them incredibly vulnerable. Which brings us to our final thought. As we wrap up this explainer, we really have to ask ourselves a vital question. With this newly surging national confidence, a solidified sense of independence, and the meteoric political rise of aggressive military leaders like Andrew Jackson, what would this mean for the defeated Native American nations standing right in the path of American expansion? The War of 1812 proved America was here to stay, for sure, but it also set the stage for our next tragic historical chapter, the Trail of Tears. Keep that question in mind as you reflect on what we've covered today. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.